Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to invite you to this episode of the Sacred Subjects Book Club. This live stream may discuss trauma of all sorts to include all types of abuse. Viewers and listeners may find it unsettling and triggering. If this live stream causes you distress, please seek support from your trusted folks and qualified mental health professionals as needed. You may also cease listening until you're able to listen again. The guests on our live streams reflect a diverse set of values, morals, and ethics that may not reflect the morals, values, and ethics of the Misfit Amish. And with that being said, I would like to start talking about the sacred subjects. Hi, Jess, and hi, Seth.
Hello.
How y'all doing? What you got, Jess?
I'm ready.
Have you read this book?
Yeah.
Do you have any overall thoughts about it?
It was a whole different book to me reading it as an adult. Like actually hearing it and hearing all of the details for the first time, even though I knew it was really gross.
Well, what about the idea that every young boy's heart beats a little faster at the thought of a special girl? Seth, do you have any thoughts about that? Every young boy's heart beats a little faster at the thought of a special girl.
That's throwing some assumptions, is it not?
How so?
Well, not every person is attracted the same way. So assuming that is quite a thing. And also the point at which attraction begins also varies developmentally. So that's also throwing in an assumption that every young boy, at what age?
There's no age given.
Exactly. So it's throwing out a blanket assumption, which is damaging.
How about this one? Every girl's eyes shine a little brighter at the mention of a special boy.
Okay, that's really what we're reading today. So I need to provide a disclaimer to our audience, and I'm really happy that our audience is here. But I'm just going to throw out a caveat here. I have not read this fine piece of literature that we're about to undergo. But partially that's intentional because I own all of the sacred subjects little booklets. But I'm not reading them intentionally because I find them extremely traumatic. And I figured we'd just get my reactions live. And so that's fun, right?
So if you open the booklet, that's literally the first paragraph.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
You're not joking.
The very
I
first
wish I was joking.
You're not joking.
I'm not joking.
So,
this is the first paragraph.
Okay. So can we talk about assumption, and can we talk about what that does to just expecting that people are going to act, behave, and be a specific way without really any precursor or understanding of human development or how people react in the world? You know?
The floor is yours. Let's go.
Well, I think it's really important because I think when we make those types of assumptions, it can be extremely damaging to people. For example, I did not come out eventually. I mean, I eventually came out as someone who's non-heterosexual. But the thing about it is that I was assumed to have been straight for a very large portion of my life. And that was extremely damaging because it threw out this assumption that I had to act, be in, and respond to the world in a specific way. And assuming that was not helpful. It's not helpful.
So when
I'll
I
stop
talk
talking.
about when I talk about like not knowing that there were other people like me, the erasure of like queer women and AFAB people, and how like we knew there were the lesbians, but I didn't know that what the term lesbian really meant. I just knew that those people were abominations and I shouldn't even look at them. And I didn't know that those were people that were like me.
Mm-hmm. I think it's that part. Like from the very first sentence in the book, you realize you don't fit in, you don't belong, this isn't for you. And there's that isolation part there that.
And then the demonization of anybody that you could identify with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you have to fit in one of the boxes, and if you don't, there's just something wrong with you. And there's no space given for that.
There's only two boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Straight. Actually, there's three boxes. There's straight, there's male, and female. And the other part of that is over and over, I hear from people who have children that happen to be intersex, and the way that those, even as babies, are treated inside of insular Anabaptist communities and insular religious communities as a whole, by and large, is harmful. People discriminate against babies because of these assumptions and these strict binary roles that they want to put us into.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really telling. I didn't even know what that was until I was an adult. I didn't even have any concept of what that meant.
Of what meant.
Of being intersex.
I didn't either. But yeah, we got a lot of food for thought here, so we could probably move on to the next paragraph.
Well, can we just really quickly, before
Go
we
ahead,
move on to
Seth.
the next paragraph? That's only the first.
I know. I know. I know.
Okay, continue on.
Can we talk about consent, personhood, bodily autonomy? Because let's go here. Boys often proclaim loudly how they don't care for girls. They may even pretend they can't stand them or that they're going to be a bachelor, but the truth is that there comes a time in every normal boy's life when he thinks in a serious way about girls.
It's that word normal that bothered me the most.
Well, it's the word normal, but also if a child is telling you they're not attracted to a certain group, would it really harm you to respect that?
There's no space.
Where is that child's personhood and bodily autonomy? Where is that child learning that consent matters?
Yeah, all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
But don't worry, we're about to learn how girls may also pretend that they too are not interested in boys.
Just the way they worded it takes away a person's ability to even say how they're feeling or say what they think about it. Like it's taken from them and they're like, let me explain this to someone else for you.
Like these children, even though these children are verbalizing what they're experiencing, they could not possibly know what they're experiencing. And we need this minister to tell us, this author minister who has to be anonymous. to tell us what they really mean by that isn't really what they said. The sheer amount of gaslighting
I also thought it was really telling the part about girls, where there's like 3 options for your life. You get to teach school, stay home and care for your mother, or become an old maid. That's it.
Our whole life is to be dedicated in servitude. Just we have not actually embraced our true worth and value until we have embraced and submitted to the will of the Lord to be a subjugated person who doesn't have bodily autonomy. Our ownership should come from our husbands and our fathers and our grandfathers and our ministry. We can never even speak what we mean. Oops. Hi, Seth.
I'm struggling.
You're struggling, but we're about to learn about baking a cake.
Girls may pretend that they too are not interested in boys. Okay, pause. Some do that. Okay. They said may.
And they said girls. They didn't say some.
Good point. They're going to teach school all their life. Okay. They're going to teach school all their lives, or they're going to stay home and care for mom, or they're going to be the community old maid. But here too, the truth is that every girl has a longing for a partner to trust and love and to share life with her. Can I vomit? What?
Seth, imagine growing up in an environment where people truly believe that, where you heard those things expressed to you from multiple adults in your life as a queer person.
Well, this is not just as a queer person. They're throwing this out to the
everybody.
entire everybody. Then when you throw in that queer identity, right? As you just mentioned, how much more on top of that is this as to validate what you just said? Because
which is why I threw it in there.
Let's be real. Holy cow. It's like, is it the 1950s? Is it the 1940s? I don't understand. Is that a wrong thing to say in this live? Should I not
I think
have
it's
said
1800s.
I think that's a valid point. Is it the 1800s?
Fair enough. Sorry if I got the year wrong. I'm just saying, I'm just saying, are we still back in the time where women don't have rights? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because what the way that they are proclaiming this is essentially saying that women don't have the freedom to be independent. They're essentially saying that women don't have the right to be independent human beings with free autonomy, but that they are 100% dependent upon another person. And that is not at all reality in this world.
But that is reality when you
for
are raised
so many people
in the Amish world. For so many Amish women and AFAB people, that is the reality. So we are born in America and we are raised in America where women have bodily autonomy, where women are supposed to have personhood, where women are supposed to have constitutional rights. And we may not have that. Our culture is entirely different.
Yes. And I want to actually apologize for how I phrased that. This is a little tricky conversation for me, and I want to apologize if I phrased that wrong. Because I phrased it. Well, I phrase it as if, but women don't. And the truth of the matter is, many women do live in this high control, like many women live in high control religions in which this is the reality. And it is really, really sad, and it is really, really wrong. And I'm not trying to in any way undermine the fact that that is still happening. What I'm saying is that we're moving in a generation and like in a society where this shouldn't be the case anymore, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, this shouldn't be the case. You're
Right.
you're correct. One of our listeners, Benita, says women has absolutely zero rights in these communities. A woman on her own has no value. Her value comes from the men in her life. That's right. Her value and her voice. Her personhood and bodily autonomy are given to her by the men in charge of her. And if you cannot see that, step back, step away, and challenge your perception of what personhood and bodily autonomy are. Yeah. But no, I think that's an important part to remember, is that we live in a country, in a society where we like to think that women have some kind of rights. And yet, women from these communities do not necessarily have the opportunity to have any kind of rights. So, anyways, should we go to the cake part? Because we could sit here and literally just talk about the first 2 paragraphs for an hour, could we not?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the cake? Either of you. How do you feel about the cake making part?
I'll be honest, I haven't read it, so someone educate me, fill me in about what I'm about to undergo. Please tell me what I'm about to receive, because I'm already in a place of deep. I feel as if I'm being traumatized. So tell me what are we about to undergo with the cakes?
When I read this again, my whole stomach felt sick, because I remember very distinctly, as I was like 12, 13, 14, I remember feeling so anxious and just feeling like this dark sense of doom of like, I'm going to mess this up. I have no idea how to do this. I watched other girls that already had their weddings planned out, and I was just sitting there like, oh no, I don't know how to do any of this. I remember like thinking about it and like thinking about all the details of, because they did talk about the cake and making the cake and all of that. And I was just like, I can't do this. I'll go to the mission field. Because that's what lots of girls in my community would do when they didn't get married and find a boy. They just went to the mission field. It was simple, and they could be single. And I'm like, that's what I'll do.
Yes. I was supposed to get married in that summer that I escaped, and I didn't even have the wedding planned out. Literally. I'm just saying, like, that's the thing, is like, it's really hard to plan something you really don't want. Secondly, when you get married, as Benita also mentioned, in her community, a woman loses her name when she gets married. So the thing about the ownership part and the baking the cake, part of what stood out to me with baking the cake is like, so Alvin and Amos, they're 2 boys who wanted to make a cake, and they had the best of intentions. Oh yes, we hear this one quite a lot, right? And they didn't prepare properly. This is the gist of it. It's like we speak in parables, right? Like we do that. We speak in parables. So they basically started making this cake. They didn't have the right ingredients and stuff, and they didn't do it in the right order.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the writer says, seeking a life companion is a lot like baking a cake, only more serious. Many young people have dived in just like Alvin and Amos, trusting their eagerness and good intentions would make up for their ignorance and inexperience and lack of counsel. And it usually doesn't. I think Seth has some interesting. What?
Can I
What?
pitch this? Do I really need this? Do I
Just
have to? Can I
light it up.
for
What?
demonstration purposes? Can we play target practice?
Why?
What? So wait.
Why?
So we're essentially we're essentially breaking down. We're essentially dismantling human development, dating, trust, all of that stuff that goes into a relationship to baking a cake.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, from the 2 paragraphs that we've already read, we can tell that from this it is so, and I hope I don't say the wrong word here. It is so conservative in nature that there's zero trust or account. No, what's the word I'm looking for? There's zero. No, I'm going to say this. There's zero trust given to the individual, so people are just viewed to be unaccountable and unworthy in and of themselves, and therefore they need guidance to guide them in every step of the way. So it's like stripping away people's personal autonomy, people's personal ability to make their own wise decisions. Am I wrong in my assessment?
No, you're absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I talk about it. And when I talk about it, I wrote something a while ago talking about the names and the ownership and all of that. And I think it's a perfect and appropriate time to read this if y'all want to hear it, because it goes along with this. You know, when you start thinking about the handmaidens, if you think the Handmaid's Tale, the way I related to the Handmaid's Tale was intense. Because when they named the handmaids, what did they do? The men in charge of them, of whatever the man's house was. And for us, we would talk about women with their husbands or their father's first name. It really stuck out to me how, like, we would talk when we got married, we would be referred to by our husband's name and then our name instead of our father's often. Unless, like, genealogy was being discussed, even the widow was called instead of, and I'll use my oven, my incubator, as an example because I feel she's worthy of this discussion. She was called John C. Sally. That was her name as a widow. Or she was called the Ape Sally. Because even as a widow, she didn't have personhood and bodily autonomy. And when she was remarried again to a widower with a different name, and his name was Will Kemp, then she was Will Sally. And she was still, for genealogy purposes, John C. Sally. I don't even know my maternal grandmother's father's name. I don't even know it. They didn't list her parents in our genealogy book. She was Tichon Mary because I was named after her. Our identity is tied to the men in charge of us. We didn't exist as humans without that name as an identifying factor. Even my aunts and uncles, and I'm going to name some of them who were in Sins of the Amish because I feel they're worthy of this. So, like, Rudy, Lizzie, or Uni, Lydia, or, anyways, I have a whole list of names. But the point is every single one of them, we called them by their husband's name first and then their name. This is how people knew who we were. We weren't allowed middle names in our settlements. Instead, our middle initial was the first letter of our father's last name. My Amish name is forever tied to my Amish father. Even if I had gotten married, I would have been called Henry Mary and still had my name be with my father's name. And once you get married, you have to submit to your husband's authority, ministry, husband, father, grandfather. You didn't have bodily autonomy and personhood in an environment like that. Even when you would vote in the church, you were supposed to vote on certain activities because it was a ritual. It was a thing that we did. And when the women and girls were asked, they were supposed, and I was taught to vote with whatever my father or my husband said. And if I went against it, I'd be going against God. What, Seth?
Okay, I was aware of the name, like some, not the extent of the name stuff, right? Of like in regards to the middle name and middle initial and that stuff. That's news to me. But you, um, in regards to voting, you had to vote what your
Husband or
husband
father?
thought.
I was taught that if we did a vote, we called it a vote in church matters. And right now I'm sinning because I'm telling you church business. And you're
Okay.
an outsider. You're not
Oh,
privileged enough. You're not qualified.
I'm
Okay.
also very gay, so I wouldn't be allowed.
I mean,
So I'm a
I
heathen.
don't think that's really the problem. The problem is you're an
Heathen.
outsider.
I'm a heathen.
Anyways, I digress. But yes, we would call it a vote. And we would take a vote for certain church activities. And when we were taught to vote, even though we called it a vote, and when we were taught to vote, we were supposed to vote with our husbands or our fathers. And that was like a thing. That was a thing. I have heard this since I was a small child.
So this is in church matters, right?
Yes.
Did that extend beyond?
I was also taught that when you get married, you have to do whatever your husband wants you to, whenever he wants you to, and wherever he wants you to, including inside the bedroom and out.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's interesting. Sounds like men really wanted to get married then.
Really, Seth?
Did I go too far? Sorry, my trauma humor. I apologize. Not probably on this live. I will back off. I apologize. Keep
What are
going.
men really wanting to get married? What makes you think that? I have no idea where you.
Well, they wanted to be served hand and foot, is all I'm saying, and it's wrong, and it's wrong in every shape, in every way, shape, and form. And I can't believe that it's happening and that it's allowed, and it makes me angry, and it makes me want to fight.
Seth,
It
don't
makes me want
you
to fight
know?
for women. What?
Don't you know that it is a privilege to be born into this church and given the gift of serving these men?
It's a gift. This certainly doesn't sound like a gift. Gifts are things we want to receive.
But also, I could never know what I want in life. I need this anonymous minister to tell me what I want in life, right? Yes?
So, like, go ahead, Jess. I'm talking enough.
I just was like, I mean, it's a gift to men.
But this is our duty, our obligation. It is a privilege to serve in that matter. Don't you know, Jess?
It's the reason we were created, obviously.
Like this is the whole reason we exist.
Mhm.
We were created to be helpmates.
Do you love it, Seth?
I don't. And honestly, I'm happy I'm gay. Like especially in this conversation, it's like the one winning point because if I was not gay, I would actually feel very very like um because the thing about it is like what it's really showing and what it's really emphasizing is how men have used the church and they have used religious systems for their own power and control. And what they've done is they have literally used it to monopolize and control women, and it's wrong. And then they've used the Bible to back it up, and it pisses me off. And sorry if I've said the wrong words I shouldn't have said, but it makes me angry is what I'm trying to communicate.
It's also called religious trauma, yes.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. I think it was also interesting that there's a fair amount of gaslighting in here too about we can't even know what's right or wrong for ourselves.
Uh-huh.
Like they even took that away. Where like you might think you're doing okay, you might think you're doing the right thing, but don't ever trust yourself. Like it literally says we'll not be able to judge what is right and what is wrong.
Uh-huh.
It's so gross.
One of our listeners says it's really fun watching Seth's reactions. I just want everybody who listens to this to know that.
Well, I'm really happy that someone is finding joy in my reactions because I am struggling. And I'm so nervous that I'm going to say something wrong. So I want to just throw this out to this entire community. I care about you and I support you and I will fight for you. But if I say anything wrong in this live, please know I don't mean this. This is so delicate. This is so delicate conversation. So but it makes me angry. It makes me angry.
Can I just say this? If you feel like Seth is saying something wrong, you need to actually talk to him about it. People cannot correct their actions if they don't know better. But I would also say, like, I don't know if you know this, but there are people who really do support you as a person and they respect your opinion, Seth. So, you know, maybe it is normal to be afraid when, you've had a large growing journey, have you not?
Just a little bit. You can thank me
But
for that.
what?
We can thank you for that. But it's
But the point is when people are willing to engage in conversations and have the difficult conversations, it doesn't mean that we're always going to get it always perfect. What it does mean, though, is we're going to open the conversation to have a broader conversation, and it's going to lead to more conversations about the very issue. But your reaction, Seth, is really, really validating, even to like this listener says it's raw. Seth's raw reaction to this is actually validating. Like, know that sometimes we need that validation of like, we didn't just make it up. It really was that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
What?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, and I was just going to point out the irony of it all is we've gotten like 4 pages in. This is how far we've gotten. And there's actually 28 pages to this little booklet. And people might think these little pamphlets are really nothing. Oh, how much harm can really be in there? We've legitimately talked about 4 pages in 34 minutes. And there's so much more that could be said.
They're heavy.
Yep. And there's a lot to unpack there. And for myself and Jess, who grew up as women and AFAB people inside of these environments, it is really just a matter of like processing and sorting out some of the things that we have experienced and then understanding those and looking at them with a different lens and maybe kind of comprehending how harmful some of those things were.
Mm-hmm.
What, Seth? I feel like you just rolled your eyes and you said a bad word off, like with your mic muted.
I have an idea.
What?
But we shouldn't talk about it in this live.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to say it. Have you ever considered writing a research on these?
I've thought about it, but I honestly think I would need somebody else who is not as close to it to help write it.
Oh, yeah.
Are you volunteering?
Might.
Well, one of the things that people have asked me for over and over is to rewrite the sacred subjects. Oh, I'm not saying rewrite the sacred subjects. I'm not doing that.
No, nor would I.
Writing an article about them. That's more from an academic perspective or research perspective, I think could be very helpful and beneficial.
We can just hit the highlights.
What'd you say, Jess?
It could be powerful, but it would also take a lot to go through them like that.
It would. And that's why I was saying I need somebody to assist with that isn't quite as close to it. When you grow up in an environment like this, and you know that these are still being circulated, and you know that these have been promoted by people who know better. There is no excuse. If they don't know better, they have chosen to not know better. And you know that people, and especially children, are still being harmed by these booklets. Well, that's why we're having a book club. Hi, Seth. Yes?
There's a question. Did you see it in the chat?
Which one?
By Dina, and I just want to make sure we answer it.
Did the girls in the Amish community talk with each other about all the issues discussed here, and could they think for themselves?
I think we should address the question, and I clearly can't. I think I know the answer, but
it's a good question. Let's see what Seth is going to assume here.
Clearly no. So did they talk to each other about the issues discussed here? What I would assume, and again, assumptions. Not good. So I would need to do research on this. But from my experience in conservative religion, not quite as conservative as this, but conservative nonetheless. It was a form of conservative faith, but not quite this conservative. But what I do know about conservative faiths and a lot, and again, did I say that wrong? Because I'm not trying to say this is a faith.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
If I said that wrong, I don't mean to. This is an entire culture.
I'm gonna put you in timeout if you apologize one more time.
Okay. Just know I'm not trying to say anything wrong.
We know. Everybody knows.
But so did girls in the Amish community talk with each other about all the issues discussed here? I would assume that they probably would want to, but probably feared not to, and felt like they were unable to. There seems like there was a lot of power and control that was currently being influenced over them, so that they probably felt like that was not a possibility. And I would also assume, and again, assumptions are bad, so I would want to get verification of this. But I also would think that if they were to talk about these issues, that they would feel like there could be some type of consequence for that. So if they were to talk that, and then someone were to find out that they were talking about these issues, that they could then be punished in some way. So there was probably fear in doing so. And then this idea, could they think for themselves? I think that's kind of that could, I think everyone is able to think, but I think
So
that
here's,
I
can
don't
I
know how to answer
interject
that.
here?
Yes, please come rescue
I'm
me.
going to interject here because
Thank you.
one of the things that people do, quite frankly, is they infantilize plain and Amish people. They write research articles wherein they proclaim we're not often in the practice of employing abstract or critical thinking or critiquing or, like even self-reflection. And the fact is it in medical terms, it's like they're calling us cognitively impaired because we were born Amish. And when it comes to layman's terms, what they're really saying, these researchers are really saying that we're stupid. That's not true.
Mm-hmm.
It is dehumanizing. And I think often people ask questions based on that assumption because Amish are portrayed as kind of dumb, kind of backwards. Comedians make entire livelihoods off of mocking Amish people, making comedy about Amish people. They portray us as kind of dumb, kind of simple, kind of stupid, kind of don't know. It's not that we're incapable of knowing, it's that there's stereotypes about us, and that is one of the stereotypes. It is a trope that has been trotted out over and over and over again. And these researchers play into it by publishing so-called academic research wherein they say Amish women can't speak without a man present. Dina, if you read my book, you can learn all about my grandmother and some of the other powerful women role models I had growing up. What's up, Seth?
We don't know. Dina may have read your book.
Well, maybe she could go read it again. Like, I really think that Dina is trying to know and understand a little bit, but I also think that that question comes from a place of stereotyping.
Okay. Go further.
Could they think for themselves?
Yeah, I struggled with it. I struggled with that question, right? Like I struggled with it. But did you see that there was a clarification?
Okay. I mean, maybe people get taught to believe things. They get conditioned and groomed to believe things. But it also doesn't mean, like, for example, if you think about, like, my grandmother, for example, like, she was a woman who was like, no, I'm not doing this. And people knew she had a voice. Even people outside the settlement knew she had a voice. They knew she had power. I wouldn't even say, like, I would even argue that there's Amish women that are practicing Amish women today that am in contact with who, like, would absolutely say, I'm not brainwashed. I control myself and ain't nobody taking that from me. They're just human beings. And there's varying degrees to which some of this is enacted in their lives. And there are Amish women who do not tolerate shit. Does that make sense? Jess, do you have any thoughts and insights? Floor is yours.
I can't speak for Amish people, but as someone
Yeah.
from a Mennonite background, people often thought that we couldn't think for ourselves. It kind of, they would look at us as like childish even though we were full-grown adults at times. And it's really gross and it's really dehumanizing. And I think it makes us vulnerable, but it also takes away, I don't know how to say it. People don't take us seriously because they look at us as childish.
They look at us as lesser than. They look at us as less capable.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of that is often when people see plain people, they automatically assume they're Amish. And so if they hold that stereotype, like towards plain people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What, Seth?
Do you see what I see?
Yep.
Stay inside your box? Oh, Joe, don't you wish the box was made that could contain me?
I threw the box away, so there's not really a box to stay inside of, and I'm very happy that way.
I'm pretty sure I burned the box, but I could do it again if I need to.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we continue?
Before I say something else.
Oh, go ahead, Jess. Go ahead.
I don't know who this Joe person is, but I've spent my entire life being told to stay inside the box, and I am very, very happy outside of it.
Why are you telling me to color within the lines? I'm not going to stay in the box. I'm not going to color in the lines. You're welcome. Now you know what to expect here. I mean, Jess, when we go to this whole book, and the plain people have very strong teachings against divorce. Joe, it's important to have these conversations about the things that we grew up believing so that other people can hear they're not alone in this journey. And so that also we can understand ourselves and our experiences better.
Mm-hmm.
So it is important to have these conversations. And I don't think Joe means any harm, by the way. But anyways, that is as it should be, of course. But it gives people false impressions. It makes it sound as all of our marriages are happy successes. But many husbands and wives know this is not true. Many married couples have troubled marriages. Many dating couples have their troubles even before marriages, but usually they keep it quiet. Others never suspect the disappointments, the questions, the doubts, fears, and frustrations they may be feeling. There's no way to avoid the ups and downs in life. That is a part of life, especially of any effort to accomplish something good. But just as it is easier to bake a cake with proper preparation and knowledge, so our courtship years and marriage may be greatly helped by being better prepared. What up, Seth?
I have some problems.
Oh, do tell.
So essentially, if I understand this correctly, in baking the cake, women have no choice. They must submit. It's 100% up to the man. Correct? Based upon this rhetoric. Not the right rhetoric. I mean, not a good rhetoric, but the rhetoric that's being proposed.
It is godly to submit to the men.
Okay. So so you submit. So you submit to the man. You get into this marriage, do all the things. But guess what? Can't divorce, even if it's bad. Because there are there's no way to avoid the ups and downs in life. So essentially, submit, and guess what? If it's crap, just deal with it.
And don't worry, there's always going to be ups and downs, which is crap. But also, if your partner is abusive, you cannot leave.
Yeah, because submit. So essentially what it's doing is it's literally laying the foundation. It's laying the framework for an abusive environment. Literally, it's like
That's one of the reasons.
Go ahead, Jess.
I'm sorry, Seth. I thought you were finished.
Oh no, go. One of the reasons.
That's one of the reasons that growing up, I would look at other couples, and so many of them were absolutely miserable. Like there were horrible things going on. Everybody knew about it, but they had no other option. And the women were absolutely miserable. But they always had to submit. They always had to do what their husband or the church told them. And it's just the way it was.
So, when you consider like some of the life experiences I've had, there's all these people who tell me, well, your mother was abused too. And maybe she was, but she was also a parent. And parents have an obligation to their children. And she was also prosecuted for crimes. But this is the rhetoric that made it to where she had to stay in a relationship up until the last 4 years of her life. She was in a relationship where she was physically abused and probably I'm shut up now.
So the cake that they're proposing is the foundation for an abusive environment. So what they're proposing with this book, this wonderful book that's been proposed here, what the cake that they're proposing is just so wonderful for a happy, fruitful, godly marriage is actually the recipe for abuse.
But seek ye first a suitable marriage partner, okay? Anyways, seek ye first the kingdom of God, okay? That's really it. You should always get your parental approval for your relationships. You shouldn't be dating before you get baptized. And in our settlements, that age was anywhere from 16 to 19. I've known people who got baptized in their at 20 or whatever, but they were considered to be old and they experienced coercive events to encourage them heavily to get baptized. But people were still allowed to date once they went with the young folks, whether they were baptized or not. And then there's a whole part of purity culture, and there's a whole part of I'm sorry, I have a lot to say about this book, but I'm sure I see the thoughts in your eyes and go ahead, Jess, go ahead.
The one thing that keeps going through my head is all of the purity culture, all this stuff, baking the cake and all that. I think it's really telling if we look, at least for me, if I look at my family and the generations that, what happened to me, what happened to my mother, what happened to my grandmother, it's not working. It's not working. Everyone has trauma. We're continuing to pass this on generation to generation. We're doing the same stuff and nothing's changing. We're baking the same old cake and we're getting the same results every single time. It's literally a recipe for abuse, like you said, Seth.
I would agree. Well, and I think too, when you consider evidence and what evidence teaches us about the recipe for a healthy relationship today versus that cake that we're using as the metaphor for a good godly relationship, when you start thinking about that and comparing the two and contrasting the two, it's a vastly different environment. Like, you can't have personhood and respect and bodily autonomy and trust and mutual respect and trust. The mutual part, I don't feel like that's really present if you're promoting this kind of cake. And then on top of it, adding in the purity culture and the whole idea that if like you want a good, healthy relationship, first you have to have a good, healthy relationship with your parents. And, if the boy does not have a good, healthy relationship with his parents, it's the girl's fault. Did you catch that?
Mm-hmm.
What's what? What?
Oh, just that you have some experience with purity culture.
Yes, I do. Yes. I have no idea why you would say such a thing. It's a terrible thing. We didn't go to purity balls or wear purity gowns. That was too worldly. All them worldly people out there. Woo! But we were apples and cakes. Uh, what, Seth?
Nothing.
How about this part? Chickens have a way of coming home to roost. The Bible says we will reap what we sow. Okay, insert cue song here. Bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. I'm sorry. Many times it happens that way. The seeds you are sowing and getting along with your parents have a lot more to do with the way your children will feel towards you than all the grand dreams in the world you may dream. What?
This is so guilt heavy.
The sheer amount of shaming and guilt tripping. I can hear it now. Skämstigma. Kära, väs måste skämma nog it's alles rätt.
It's just so heavy. They don't even try to hide it. Like, it's horrible.
Do you rage when you read this book?
Yep.
What is rage? When it feels like your whole body and every cell and every atom of your being is just like horrified by the fact that, number one, like part of the reason that you experience the experiences that you did experience and the very harmful experience that enabled people to torture you for over a decade and during your formative years and to get away with it and for nobody to provide any meaningful intervention.
Mm-hmm.
What is rage when it feels like it's, kind of pointless to even have this conversation? But I have to have this conversation because these booklets are still being circulated. They're being promoted and recommended by people who know better. I don't know that I would call it rage so much as I feel broken. Maybe we should have a rage book burn party. It might feel cathartic. It might do my heart some good. What you got, Seth?
So typically I'm not like for banning books, and like typically like I'm like on like I want to like be in support of authors whose books have been banned and that type of thing. But my question is, I highly doubt that these are banned.
They're not.
Therefore, they should be. Why aren't they?
Entire communities build their lives around them.
Mennonites, plain Mennonites, use these booklets
Mm-hmm.
in addition to Amish people. They build their entire lives around us.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
holier than thou art.
it explains so much.
How so?
I have to be careful with what I say here, but we've had conversations with some individuals that this makes sense.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying? Like the rhetoric, the viewpoints, the ideas.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I can see why you think what you think. Having read some of these books, it's like, okay, no, I see where you're getting your ideas from.
Mm-hmm.
But how damaging it is. Like these books should be banned. These books should be banned, and they should be, as weird as it sounds, they should be burned. They shouldn't be in existence.
Mm-hmm.
They're
And that's
published.
weird for me to say because I'm not in favor of it.
I'm typically not in favor of book banning either. But, somebody's asking, asked what kind of publishers would publish a book like this anyway. It's called Pathway Publishers. They're an Amish publisher. This is an Amish publisher. They have a location in Canada and Michigan. They publish magazines, Family Life, Blackboard Bulletin, Young Companion. Can one of you read that? I can't read that. That is disgusting.
You want me to read that?
Yes, for the people who listen to only the audio.
There is a comment in our chat that says there is even a book with the same title as Mary's biography, but it is a purity type book.
Can we only hope that some people will be looking for it and they'll find my book instead and read it and listen to hear? Can we only hope that?
I can only hope.
Oof. Well, I think I'm about ready to wrap this up. We got about, I don't know, halfway through, but we summarized like the rest of it, which is pretty much, we didn't talk about the alcohol, the strong drink. We didn't talk about the Bible verses in here to justify the position. And we didn't talk about young girl, your virginity is a great treasure. And I think that's for next time. Or should we just scrap it? What do we say?
There's so much.
What did you say, Seth?
I'm gonna have to have some canned answers for that. Like I'm not prepped for that.
Well, if it gives you any idea, I think it's been like over 7 months since we've had our last book club discussion because it was so dramatic.
It's been that long.
Yeah, I think it was like September, I think.
I also didn't help matters.
Yeah, but like it is important, and like somebody pointed out, like your visceral reactions to it felt validating to them as somebody who grew up in one of these communities where these values were held dearly and practiced, and as somebody who grew up as a as a girl, as a woman in one of those communities, like that's important for them to see. Is it even though, maybe they didn't have the exact same experiences as I did or what Jess did or what you did, but to know that we can have empathy for one another
Mm-hmm.
and understanding and compassion, and they're not alone. And it was that bad. It really was that bad. But yeah, I'm hoping that we won't come back in 6 months with another book club discussion. We will see.
We will see.
We will see. Do y'all have any parting thoughts? Don't everybody jump at once.
I think the biggest thing that I took away as an adult reading it after learning it as a child was we have autonomy. We have the right to make our own decisions. If you are in a setting like that, you are worth more. You do have value, and your thoughts, opinions, and autonomy are yours and have value.
That's the truth. Thank you, Jess. What about you, Seth?
So these books explain a lot. But what I want to really point out is that, well, I want to echo Jess's words as a therapist, right? That you have worth, that you have value, and that you do not have to be defined by another person. You are valid in and of yourself, outside of anyone else. You you are worthy. You are valuable. For all of the women in this room, I want you to know that while some traditions may proclaim that a man is what is required in order for you to have standing or have worth or value, I want to stand in the gap right now and say, not today. Today, you are worthy and valuable for who you are. Sorry, I'm repeating myself, but I'm trying to I'm trying to encapsulate it, because this is damaging. And if there's anything I can say is please, 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 be careful if you decide to read this, and know that there are people out there that can help you work through things like religious trauma, because that's really what this book proposes and what it puts forth. And it explains why so many people find themselves trapped in systems of religious trauma and control.
And
But you
not
don't
only
have.
that,
Mm-hmm.
but in relationships
Bingo.
that have elements of interpersonal violence, people are trapped there and they're unable to leave because of that. I would agree with Jess. Like, yes, like if you are in an environment like that, you are worthy. You are worthy of goodness in the world. You are worthy of kindness in the world. You are worthy of personhood and bodily autonomy. You are capable of making decisions for yourself. You are a whole, valid human being. And you don't deserve what's happening to you if you don't have bodily autonomy and personhood. Everybody deserves to live a life that is meaningful, where they make meaningful connections and where they live a life that is congruent with their own personal values and their own beliefs, and not the beliefs of whatever religious group that they're in or that they were born in. Even if they joined in, that religious group has imposed upon them. And if your religion incorporates any of these values, maybe it's time to consider whether or not that religion is something that actually aligns with your true values. I'd encourage you to get out there and to think about how your life would look like in an ideal world, and what are the steps you can take to obtain that? Do you think you deserve access to intervention and resources to be able to escape? Because I think you do. And there are groups of people out there that will help you. And with that being said, I'd like to thank Jess and Seth for being here. Really appreciate it. Great discussion. I mean, terrible topic, but great discussion. We needed to have it. Thank you. I'd like to thank all of our viewers and guests. We couldn't do this without you. As always, thank you to our Patreon subscribers, hosted by myself, Mary Baller, funded by the Misfit Amish, and our Patreon subscribers, produced by the Misfit Amish in 2024, art by BJK and MB. Like, comment, subscribe,